So within this scene, just a recap, the user or participant will not have any movement capabilities. They will only have their hand controller and raycast capabilities. So one more thing while I'm still in the home space, I want to, whenever I get into my environment, change the enter into a home button so I can go back to my home space. So I'll just duplicate the enter button, call it button home. In my button home, scroll down. When I click on button home, I want to go back to the home space. So I will write another script. Actually, I'm gonna try to edit this script so that instead of going into the script, I can just have a scene that I want, so I can reuse the script over and over and over again. So let's go back into our scripts here, go enter scene, paste in this code here that I just generated, and we'll see if it works. But it says public string scene name, so this is giving me a variable to work with in Unity here. Enter scene transitions, so it's still enter scene transition, so instead of that I'm just going to put scene transition, and I'll rename the script as well. So it'll load scene, it'll check what the scene name is, and it'll give me a debug log warning saying scene name is not set in the inspector if I wrote something incorrectly. So I'm going to save that, exit out, and rename my scene to just scene transition. I'll do main scene transition. So I'm going to call it main scene transition. Save it, exit, and here make sure this is the same as the same name that you put in the script. I'm going to go to my button enter and scroll down, and it changed to main scene transition, and then here scene name, whenever I enter I want to go to my scene 1. So and now I can reuse that script here in the home button. So I'll add component on home, main scene transition script, and for the scene name, whenever I click the home button, I want to go back to my main home space. So make sure you do this exactly the way that you wrote it over here. Cool. So I'm in my button home. I've got my script here. Oh, and I have 2, so I'll just remove that component. So when we click on the enter, we have to redo this bit that we did before. So go to main scene transition and load scene here. And I also, at the same time as pressing the enter button, I want to add another thing where I hide the enter button. So I've dragged the enter button here, and I'm going to do game object, set active, and unchecked that box. So it hides, and the home button will show up. So I'm going to add another on click. 3 things are happening on click. Now I want my home button to appear. Set active and check that. Cool. So what do I want when my home button appears? When my home button appears, I want to, the button enter is already hidden, so we're good. Drag my home button into the object, go to the function, main scene, and load scene. In the scene that will be loaded is the home space. And I might have to go in and say, okay, bring back my enter button. So just in case, I will grab the enter button, and whenever I click on home, I want to go back and have that functionality to re-enter. So main scene transition, load scene for the enter button. So, you know, we can go ahead and test this whenever we get our next, get our menu button on the Oculus set up. Oh, don't forget to hide the home button in the beginning. So you want to see enter. I decided to make the fog an orange color and change the lighting up a bit because I want, even though I'm using the same environment as the first scene, which maybe you should, since y'all have only one other scene anyway, you should just make this environment totally different, I think. But for me, it just makes sense. But I want people to know that this is a home space, so I changed the lighting a bit so that it would be not exactly the same from scene one. That way you actually recognize that, okay, you are in this home space. So I made it a little bit orange, and I changed the view of where my participant is going to be looking at first. All right, so next up, if you want to go and add more chapters, you already know how to transition into a scene here. So you just add that same script to a different chapter and change the scene in which you click on chapter 1 to go to, right? Next up, we want to get back to our menu UI when we're in the world. So let's go into your world in scenes, and I'm gonna choose my scene 3 here because that's the most similar to probably what y'all are gonna have. My world or scene 3 has XR interaction, XR origin, XR movement, everything that y'all already have in your worlds. And I have a user interface already implemented in it, but it's not really my main home interface, so I'll add another. So for this to work, you're gonna be you're gonna have to go to Windows, Package Manager, and make sure you have the Oculus XR plugin in your project, and make sure you're using the XR interaction toolkit as well. Go back to get our menu that we made, clicking back into home world and just taking this user interface and copying it and then pasting it into our world. One thing you want to do when it's here is go into your buttons and make sure that button enter is hidden and button home is toggled on. You can just toggle off the interface. Toggle it off because we don't want to see it in the beginning. We only want to see it if the menu on our controller is hit. And now we're going to go into our scripts folder, right click, create, C# script, call it toggle menu, and open it up. Control Alt, delete, and paste in the code that I have linked in the description below. Taking a look at this, this took me a little while to, I just use GPT like I always say, but it did take me a while to generate an effective script. And so I just want to tell you real quick what it does. So it's it's giving us a few public interface objects in Unity. And so we can select the game object, which will be the user interface that we want to toggle on. And this is an input action reference to a menu toggle action. And I'll talk about that because we have to mess with input action manager. So that's next. And then here, there's a public camera transform because we're going to assign the main camera of the XR rig so that whenever we toggle on the menu, it shows up wherever we're looking in the VR environment. Now, I will say that this script isn't perfect because for me, it's showing up a little bit to the right, and I'll show you an example of that. But it works, and you can just give it an offset or something if you need, or you can just turn your head right and it'll be fine. Distance from the player is how far the UI will show up from the player view. So if you want it to be really close or a little bit farther away. And these are offsets for the menu position. So basically what it's doing is whenever I hit on the left controller, the menu button, which is at the bottom with the three hamburger lines, my menu will pop up now. And whenever I press it again, it'll toggle my main menu off. So that's nice. But not only that, we're using this time scale to whenever the menu is toggled on, it'll pause the environment. So in case like anything is animating within the game environment or experience, you'll just pause it for a second. And then you can resume whenever you press it again. So whenever the menu goes away, you resume the experience. There's also this here on destroy resume time is ensuring that time resumes if the object is destroyed. So I put this here because I noticed that whenever I went back to my home space and then I went back to my experience, it was still paused. So I wanted to resume the time if I leave the scene. So that's what that was doing. So I think that this is pretty effective and it'll probably get you to where you need to be for the project. So you can always figure things out on your own, but just go ahead and save that and exit out of it. And now I've got 2 toggle menus. So I'm just gonna delete one of my toggle menus. And then in the hierarchy, right click and create empty and call it menu controller. And drag the toggle menu script onto the menu controller. And then over here, you'll see all of these little options that I talked about a second ago. And so you'll just grab whatever user interface you want to show up. So for me, it's going to be this one, not this one, but this one. So grabbing it, dropping it in. And then menu toggle action. So this is going to be in the input action manager. So let's talk briefly about this. So in the project, go to XRI input, and here you can double click that. So you're gonna have this if you're working with the interaction toolkit. So make sure you're in the XRI default input actions. So you have like different actions that you can map. So this is action mapping. Go to, so for me, I want the left-hand interaction. I want to set an action to that. So I'm going to go to XRI left-hand interaction. I'll go to plus action and toggle menu. So I already have a toggle menu here, so I don't really want 2, but I'll go back and I'll delete what this. I'll just show y'all the walkthrough of this and then delete it. So in your toggle menu, you want to go to binding, and over here under binding, add a path. So click on this and go to XR controller, and you can either press the right arrow on the keyboard or the right you can right click, but it won't work if you try to left click it, it won't work. So right click, and then in usages, right click, and then scroll down to menu button and right click on menu button. So that's the left hand XR controller menu button. And then click generic XR controller here. And then you will, well, for me, I will delete that because I'm not going to use it because I already have it here. But then you'll exit and it'll ask you to save, and just make sure you save it. Press save. So now that that's done, you go back into your menu controller and menu toggle action, and you'll select XRI left hand menu. And whenever you type this in, it should show up the thing that you just made. Double click on it. And that's all that you need to do there. And then for the camera, in order for it to pop up in front of wherever you're looking, you just go into wherever your main camera is, which is probably attached to the XR Origin. And you can drag and drop that. And then you can select distance from the player. I'm going to do like 5. And here's some menu offset options, but I'm not going to use them right now. And I'll press save. Let's go ahead and test this out by pressing play. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. Whenever I press the left button, I can see it all the way over there. So I'm going to bring it closer to my face. I can see that it did pause the animation. So it's working, but I can't see it because the ship is in the way. So, and it's also pretty big. So I'm just going to go over into user interface, and I'm going to make it half the size that it is currently. So I just toggled this off, so it'll change all of them to 0.5 at the same time on the scale of the user interface. And then in menu controller, distance from player, it's pretty far, so I'll see what actually 2 looks like, which is what it previously was, and save. So pressing the home button, oh, there it is. Here, I'll look this way, so if I look this way, it'll hopefully show up. Yeah, so it's still pretty big, and it's also showing up immediately on my chapters section, so I want to fix that. So I will just go back in to fix the first problem, which is make it a little bit smaller. I'm gonna do like 0.1 and see what happens. And the second problem is that it's showing up on the chapter section, but I just want it to go to probably toggle this on so you can see what shows first. So we can go back to the home. Chapters shows up first. I'll just hide my chapters panel. That'll be a little bit easier. So chapters panel is hiding, controls panel is hiding, and then about panel should just show up immediately. So I'll save that. There we go. So it's sort of, the placement of it is still not perfect, but the about panel is showing up. The opacity is doing some weird things, but I can fix that later. But the point is, it pauses the game, more or less. It's not pausing the video, but it is pausing the animations. And then I can go home. Oh, it didn't actually send me home. It sent me to scene 1. So make sure on the home button, my button home, for whatever reason, I have button enter script running. So I'm going to get rid of that. Change that to button home and main scene transition. load scene. Scene name, home space. So that should take me directly home. Save. So we'll see if it takes me home. There we go. And then, so yeah, whenever you're messing with Booleans, whether it's code or in Unity or wherever, you always have to make sure to turn things off and then turn them on when you need them. And sometimes it gets confusing, but you'll get the hang of it. And then hopefully, and then I have to switch it here to like also change to the about on entry. But you know, we press enter. It takes us into scene 1. And we press home and it takes us home. So your scene 1 is, your project's going to be a lot simpler probably than what I've got going on right now. But for the project, you do need to make a home space that looks different from your main world, and you need to have a menu with telling us about the project, giving us the control mechanics of the project, and then letting us enter into the main space. You do not have to have the main menu show up in the world if you don't want, but I think it's just good for the user experience to have that. So if you would like to, you can add that in as well. But I won't be, grading based off of whether or not you have that, just the home world. So cool. Good luck, and let me know if you have any questions with that.